My girlfriend read my 8-year-old's texts and it tore our family apart. Living in a small town has its perks. Everyone knows your name, the pace is slower, and you feel a sense of community you just can't get in a sprawling city. But it also has its downsides, like the fact that privacy is a luxury, and every small action can be magnified into a town-wide spectacle. My life for the past 3 years has been a delicate balancing act, a performance of domestic harmony that I've been desperately trying to make real. I'm a single dad to an amazing 8-year-old girl, Lily, the absolute light of my life. I also live with my girlfriend, Megan, who is 32, and her 5-year-old daughter, Sophie, from a previous relationship. We're a blended family, a patchwork quilt of past lives and present hopes, but we have no children together. And that, as it turns out, is the root of a slow-growing poison in our household. Megan is a woman haunted by her past. From 18 to 25, she was lost in a world of drugs, a chaotic and painful chapter that she's put behind her, but not without scars. Those scars manifest as a deep, pervasive insecurity, a constant need for reassurance that she is loved, that she is priority number one. A lot of this, I suspect, stems from her own upbringing. Her mother is a master of backhanded compliments and passive-aggressive jabs, a woman who I believe contributed heavily to the void Megan is always trying to fill. This insecurity is the lens through which she views our life, and it distorts everything, especially my relationship with my daughter and, by extension, my ex-wife, Jessica. Lily spends 2 days a week at her mom's house. It's a stable, amicable co-parenting situation, or at least it should be. But for Megan, those 2 days are a ticking clock of anxiety. Any interaction I have with Jessica, no matter how mundane or child-focused, is perceived as a threat. A classic example, the one that perfectly illustrates the daily tightrope I walk, happened a few months ago. Lily, in the typical rush of a school morning, forgot her lunchbox. Jessica called me at work to let me know. No big deal, right? I told her I'd drop it off the next morning on my way to the office. We live only a few blocks apart, so it was a simple 5-minute detour. I pulled up to Jessica's house, saw the mailboxes at the end of the driveway, and quickly hung the lunchbox on one of the posts. It was efficient, it solved the problem, and it didn't require a face-to-face interaction that I knew might set Megan off. I thought I had navigated the minefield perfectly. I was wrong. Later that day, Megan was quiet, a storm cloud gathering behind her eyes. Finally, she let loose. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp, filled with an accusation that cut deeper than any shout. She wanted to know why I had gone to my ex's house. I explained, calmly, about the lunchbox. She scoffed, a sound of pure disbelief and disdain. She said, and I can hear the words in my head as clear as if she were saying them now, "You will jump and do anything for your ex, and nothing for me." The lunchbox, a simple container for a child's sandwich and fruit, had been transformed in her mind into a love letter, a grand gesture of devotion to a woman I was no longer with. My attempt to be a good father was twisted into a betrayal of her. It's a pattern that repeats itself, a loop of jealousy and misunderstanding that I can't seem to break. Another time, Lily was on the trampoline in the backyard, pure joy in her laughter as she tried to master a backflip. She yelled out, "Hey Dad, can you record me doing a flip so I can show Mom?" Before I could even pull out my phone, Megan stormed out of the house, her face a mask of fury. She shot a look at my daughter that made the girl freeze, then turned to me and hissed, "You don't need to be asking your dad to take and send pics to your mom. This is why we fight." The air grew heavy. The fun of the moment evaporated, replaced by that all-too-familiar tension. It's exhausting, this constant vigilance, this need to manage Megan's feelings while also trying to foster a healthy, normal relationship with my own child. I keep telling myself that we can work through it, that love is enough. But I was naive. I didn't realize that these incidents were just tremors, and the real earthquake was still to come. A seismic event triggered by a few innocent text messages on my 8-year-old daughter's phone. Time in our house is often marked by Lily's milestones, a happy counterpoint to the underlying tension. Her birthday back in April was one such bright spot. She turned 8, a big deal in her world, and was showered with gifts from both sides of her family. Among the presents she received at her mom's house was a particularly exciting set of artsy toys. It was one of those comprehensive kits, filled with everything a creative 8-year-old could dream of. Pots of vibrant, sparkly nail polish, sheets of temporary tattoos with glittery unicorns and rainbows, colorful clay, and enough beads to make bracelets for the entire neighborhood. Her eyes lit up when she opened it, a vision of future artistic projects dancing in her head. But the vision never quite materialized. The problem was, her mom's house also has a 2-year-old, a curious and chaotic little tornado of a toddler. The thought of sparkly nail polish and tiny beads in the hands of a 2-year-old was, for Jessica, a nightmare scenario. It wasn't a malicious decision, just a practical one. The artsy kit was deemed too messy, too hazardous for the current household dynamic. So it was placed on a high shelf in the closet, a treasure waiting for a safer time. A week turned into a month, and a month turned into 6. The kit remained in its pristine, unopened state, a symbol of a childhood moment on pause. Every so often Lily would mention it. "Dad, I still haven't used my birthday toys," she'd say, a hint of disappointment in her voice. I'd encourage her to ask her mom if she could use them under supervision, but the answer was always the same: maybe when your little brother is a bit older. The novelty began to wear off, replaced by a quiet frustration. She wasn't angry, just a kid who wanted to enjoy her gifts. Then, about 2 weeks ago, she came up with a solution. She called me after school, her voice bubbling with a new plan. She had asked her mom if she could just bring the toys over to my house. Jessica, probably just as tired of the unused kit taking up space as Lily was, had agreed. I could hear the excitement in my daughter's voice as she told me she'd bring them home the next day. The day she brought them over felt like a mini celebration. She walked in the door, her backpack bulging, her face beaming with pride. She carefully unloaded the kit onto our living room coffee table, laying out each component like a general inspecting her troops. Megan and Sophie were in the room, and there was a brief, polite acknowledgement of the new toys. Sophie, of course, was immediately captivated, her little hands reaching for a pot of glittery pink nail polish. Lily, ever patient, showed her the different colors, but I could see a flicker of something in her eyes. It wasn't selfishness, not really. It was the quiet desire of an older child to have something that is just hers, to be able to create, to make a mess, to explore her new toys without having to worry about a younger sister getting into everything, without having to share every single moment. For the next few days, the kit sat on the coffee table, a silent promise of fun. Lily would look at it longingly, but the timing never seemed right. Either we were busy with homework, or Sophie was around and very demanding of attention, or the general energy of the house just didn't lend itself to a focused, creative session. I saw the window of opportunity closing, the initial excitement slowly waning. Lily was learning a hard lesson about life in a blended family. Even your own things aren't always entirely your own. She was starting to accept that she might have to wait even longer to use her birthday presents, a small but significant disappointment for a little girl. I watched her, my heart aching a bit, wishing I could just give her a space where she didn't have to compete for attention or resources. But in our complex family dynamic, even the simplest things, like a box of art supplies, were loaded with unspoken rules and emotional landmines. Those toys finally made it into our house, but they carried with them more than just the promise of fun. They carried the weight of unmet expectations and the seeds of a conflict I never saw coming. The rhythm of our weekdays is a finely tuned machine, a chaotic ballet of school runs, work schedules, and dinner preparations. Lily, being 8, is increasingly independent, but she still relies on the structure we provide. Part of that structure now includes her own cell phone, a basic model mostly for emergencies and for staying in touch with a mom when she's at my house. It's a tool for connection, a small electronic tether between her two homes. I've always tried to respect her privacy with it, within reason, checking the parental controls mostly to ensure she's not accidentally wandering into some corner of the internet she shouldn't be. It's a trust-based system, or so I thought. The day that changed everything started like any other. The sun was just beginning to cast long shadows across our small town as I went through the morning routine. Lily was already at the breakfast table, munching on cereal, her mind clearly elsewhere. The artsy kit was still on the coffee table, a monument to unrealized fun. I had a busy day ahead of me at work, a series of back-to-back meetings that would require my full attention. As I was getting ready to leave, Lily's phone, which was charging on the kitchen counter, buzzed with a notification. It was a text from her mom. Lily glanced at it, her brow furrowing slightly as she read the message, then she quickly finished her breakfast and grabbed her backpack for school. I didn't think much of it. The communication between her and her mom was usually simple, logistical stuff. I gave her a hug, told her to have a good day, and watched her board the school bus. I left for work about 10 minutes later, my mind already shifting to the tasks that awaited me. It was a typical Wednesday, the kind of day that blends into the next, unremarkable in every way. I had no idea that in those few minutes after I left, a silent transgression was occurring in our kitchen. A boundary was being crossed, a trust being violated, all while I was driving down the highway, thinking about quarterly reports and client calls. The day progressed as usual. I sat in meetings, answered emails, and grabbed a quick sandwich at my desk. The issue of the artsy toys, the lingering tension with Megan, all of it faded into the background of my professional responsibilities. It wasn't until later that evening, long after the dust had settled, that I would go back and piece together the sequence of events, that I would see the digital breadcrumbs that led to the explosion. The text exchange itself, when I finally saw it, was so innocuous, so painfully normal. It was exactly the kind of brief, functional conversation that happens between a busy mom and her 8-year-old daughter. The first message, from Jessica, sent just before Lily left for school, read, "You forgot to tell your dad to bring you to get those toys." A simple reminder, a gentle nudge. Lily's response, typed out quickly before the bus arrived, was the one that lit the fuse. It read, "Dad's GF and her daughter are always around, and I kind of just want to play with them myself." It was a child's honest, unfiltered expression of a simple desire, a little bit of alone time with her new things. There was no malice in it, no deep-seated plot to alienate Megan. It was just a kid, wishing for a moment of peace and ownership. Her mom's reply was just as simple, "Talk to your dad." That was it. The entire conversation consisted of 3 short messages, a total of maybe 25 words. It was a fleeting moment of communication, a digital whisper that should have disappeared into the ether. But it didn't, because on that particular morning, I had made a fateful decision. Lily sometimes beats the bus home by about 10 minutes, a small window of time where she's alone in the house. To make it easier for her to reach me, I had a habit of leaving her phone on the kitchen counter, right by the door, so she could see it and call me if she needed anything before I got home from work. That morning, I did just that. I placed her phone on the counter, screen down, a helpful gesture that I thought was completely benign. I was securing her ability to contact me, but I was also inadvertently leaving her private thoughts exposed. I left for work, and 10 minutes after I drove away, the messaging app on my daughter's phone was opened. It was accessed, read, and absorbed by someone for whom it was never intended. I had placed the phone on the counter as a bridge of communication between my daughter and me, but it was being used as a weapon of confirmation for someone else's insecurity. I had no idea that a simple act of convenience was about to tear our fragile family apart. The rest of that day passed in a blur of mundane normalcy, a deceptive calm that masked the storm brewing beneath the surface. I was at work, completely oblivious, navigating the usual corporate landscape. My phone remained silent, save for a few work-related pings. There were no frantic calls from Megan, no urgent texts from Lily. The house, I imagined, was running smoothly. Megan worked from home most days, so she was there when Lily got off the bus. I pictured them in the living room, maybe Megan helping Sophie with a puzzle while Lily started on her homework. It was the peaceful, productive image I clung to, the one that made all the compromises and the constant tiptoeing around Megan's feelings seem worthwhile. But the reality was far different. While I was in a conference room discussing projections and targets, a silent drama was unfolding at home. The evidence of this drama wasn't in a shouting match or a slammed door, it was in the cold, hard data stored in the cloud. Later that night, after the confrontation, after the tears and the accusations, I would log into the parental control portal for Lily's phone. It's a feature I rarely check, a safety net I hoped I'd never need to scrutinize. But that night, I needed to know. I needed to understand the timeline. The app provides a usage log, a digital footprint of when and for how long certain applications were accessed. I scrolled to the messaging app, my heart pounding in my chest. And there it was. The log showed the app was opened at 8:12 a.m., 10 minutes after I had left for work. The app remained active for 3 minutes. 3 minutes! That's all it took for Megan to find the messages, read them, and let them fester in her mind. The most damning part, the part that sent a chill down my spine, was the silence that followed. Megan knew. She had read Lily's private conversation with her mother. She had seen the words that confirmed her deepest, most paranoid fears, that Lily didn't fully embrace her, that she saw her and Sophie as an intrusion. And yet, she said nothing. Not to me, not all day. She let the poison marinate. She carried that knowledge with her through her workday, through lunch, through the afternoon. She interacted with Lily, presumably, all while holding the silent accusation against her. The thought of it is sickening, the cold, calculated nature of it, the waiting. It wasn't a heat-of-the-moment reaction, it was a premeditated emotional ambush. I got home around 5:30 p.m., tired but ready to shift into dad mode. I walked in the door and the atmosphere felt off. It was a subtle shift, a change in the air pressure that only someone living in a state of constant high alert could detect. Megan was in the kitchen, her back to me, chopping vegetables with a little too much force. Lily was at the dining room table, her head bent over a workbook, but she wasn't writing. She was just staring at the page, her shoulders slumped. Sophie was watching cartoons in the living room, the cheerful sounds from the TV a jarring contrast to the heavy silence in the rest of the house. I asked the usual questions. How was your day? Good, Megan mumbled, not turning around. How was school, sweetie? Fine, Lily whispered, not looking up. I could feel the tension, a palpable thing, but I had no idea where it was coming from. I assumed it was just one of Megan's moods, another cloud of insecurity that had rolled in for no apparent reason. I've learned not to push, not to immediately ask what's wrong, because that often just makes things worse. So I just went about my routine, putting my things away, washing my hands, trying to act as if everything was normal. But it wasn't. The silence was the accusation. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket that had been thrown over the house. Megan had been carrying her secret for 9 hours. 9 hours of letting the hurt and anger build, of rehearsing the confrontation in her mind. She wasn't just angry at Lily, she was angry at me, at Jessica, at the world for confirming her belief that she would never truly be part of this family. And she was waiting for the perfect moment to strike, to release that built-up toxicity. The bus had dropped Lily off at the same time Megan was finishing her workday, so they had arrived home together. The confrontation hadn't happened yet. It was still waiting, a coiled snake ready to strike. I was just an unwitting bystander, standing in the path of the venom. The moment of detonation, when it finally came, was shockingly quiet. There was no warning shot, no gradual escalation. It just happened. I was in the kitchen, trying to make small talk with Megan as she finished preparing dinner, my words bouncing off the wall of her silence. Lily had gotten up from the dining table and was walking down the short hallway towards her bedroom, probably seeking refuge from the oppressive atmosphere. That's when Megan moved. She put down her knife, wiped her hands on a dish towel, and followed her. Her movements were deliberate, her posture rigid. I watched her go, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that something was about to happen. I stayed in the kitchen, frozen for a second, listening. I couldn't hear the words at first, just the low, firm tone of Megan's voice. It was a tone I had heard before, usually directed at me or Sophie when she was really angry. It was a tone that left no room for argument. I crept closer to the hallway, my heart thudding against my ribs. Now I could hear them. Megan was standing over Lily, who was cornered near her bedroom door, looking small and terrified. Megan's voice, though not loud, was laced with an icy fury. She was talking about the messages on the phone. She was confronting my 8-year-old daughter about a private conversation she'd had with her mother. I could hear the snippets of Megan's monologue, the accusations flying like daggers. She told Lily she doesn't need to be sending her mom stuff like that. She said messages like that were the reason she and Lily's mom couldn't get along. She was twisting it masterfully, turning Lily's simple, childish wish into a malicious act of sabotage. She was making my daughter, an 8-year-old, responsible for the adult dysfunction in our lives. I saw Lily's face from where I stood, partially hidden behind the wall. Her eyes were wide with shock and confusion. Tears were welling up, spilling down her cheeks. She was stammering, trying to defend herself, but her words were choked with sobs. She didn't understand. How could she? How could an 8-year-old possibly comprehend the complex web of adult insecurities, jealousy, and past trauma that had led to this moment? All she knew was that the person who was supposed to be a caregiver, a mother figure in her home, was accusing her of something terrible, and she was completely alone. I stepped into the hallway then. What's going on? My voice was sharper than I intended, a mix of anger and alarm. Both of them looked at me. Megan's face was a mask of self-righteous indignation. Lily's face was a picture of pure relief and terror. She ran to me, burying her face in my side, her small body trembling with sobs. I held her tight, my own anger rising like a tide. Megan didn't back down. She looked me straight in the eye and said that she had seen the messages, that Lily was being manipulative, that she was trying to turn everyone against her. She actually used the word manipulative to describe an 8-year-old who just wanted to play with her toys by herself. The sheer injustice of it all was staggering. Megan, a 32-year-old woman, had gone through a child's private messages. She had waited all day, letting her anger simmer. And then she had ambushed that child, cornering her in a hallway and verbally assaulting her, all without a single word to me. She had bypassed me, the parent, completely. She had taken it upon herself to discipline my child for a thought, a feeling expressed in a private text to her own mother. In that moment, the careful balancing act I had been performing for 3 years came crashing down. The lines I had tried to draw, the compromises I had made, all of it felt like a colossal failure. I was looking at the woman I loved, the mother of a child I cared for, and I saw a stranger, a bully, someone who had violated the most basic trust, not just with me, but with a defenseless little girl. My daughter was clinging to me, her world shaken, and I realized that the foundation of our blended family wasn't just cracked, it was a pile of rubble. And I was standing in the middle of the wreckage, holding my crying child, wondering how we were ever going to build it back again. After I got Lily calmed down and tucked into her bed, her face still blotchy from crying, the real confrontation began. The air in our house was thick and unbreathable, charged with the electricity of a major storm. Megan was in the living room, her arms crossed defensively, her jaw set. Sophie had been sent to her room, sensing the tension and wisely removing herself from the line of fire. I walked in and stood opposite her, the coffee table with its untouched artsy kit sitting between us like a piece of evidence. I didn't yell. I didn't have to. My voice was low and cold, the calm that comes after a cataclysmic event.
I asked her why she would go through Lily's phone, why she wouldn't talk to me first, why she would confront an 8-year-old child in that way. Her defense was a whirlwind of justification, a vortex of her own pain and insecurity. She said she felt attacked. She said the messages confirmed what she already knew, that Lily resented her and Sophie. She said she felt like an outsider in her own home, and those words were just proof. She talked about her past, about how people have always betrayed her, about how she has to protect herself because no one else will. She was the victim in her own mind. She had been violated by Lily's words, so her violation of Lily's privacy was, to her, an act of self-defense. I listened, at first, trying to find a sliver of understanding, a point of empathy. But the more she talked, the more I realized how deep the chasm between us was. She couldn't see it. She couldn't see that her actions were not those of a protective parent, but of an insecure adult projecting her fears onto a child. She couldn't see the fundamental difference between a child expressing a private feeling to her mother and an adult spying on that private conversation. I tried to explain it to her. I told her that Lily's message wasn't an attack. It was a cry for a little personal space. I told her that even if it had been hurtful, the appropriate response was never, ever to go through her phone. The appropriate response was to come to me, to talk to me as her partner, and to figure out how to address the feeling together, as a team. This is where the core of our disagreement lay, the question that has been echoing in my mind ever since. Where is the line? Where does the expectation of privacy lie for a child in a blended household, especially when it comes to their communication with their biological parent? In my view, the line is sacred. A child's relationship with their other parent is a sovereign territory. Lily's texts with her mom are their private domain. My role, and Megan's role, is to create a safe environment where that relationship can flourish, not to police it. Going through her phone was not just an invasion of privacy, it was an attack on that fundamental relationship. It was an attempt to insert herself into a space where she didn't belong, and in doing so, she poisoned it. Megan, on the other hand, saw it differently. She argued that anything that happens in this house, anything that affects the family dynamic, is her business. She felt that Lily's message was a direct threat to the stability of our home, and therefore she had a right to know about it and to address it.
She couldn't separate Lily's individual feelings from the collective health of the household. In her mind, Lily's desire for alone time was a symptom of a larger disease that Megan was determined to cure, even if it meant resorting to extreme measures. We argued in circles, our words passing each other like ships in the night. I was talking about boundaries, trust, and the emotional safety of a child. She was talking about her feelings, her fears, and her need to feel secure. There was no middle ground, no point of compromise. It felt like we were arguing from two different moral universes. I was trying to protect my daughter's right to have a private thought and a private conversation. She was trying to protect her own fragile sense of belonging. In that moment, looking at the woman I thought I knew, I had to ask myself the question, where is the moral high ground here? Is it with the father, fiercely protecting his child's privacy, even if it means ignoring the underlying issues? Or is it with the insecure partner, lashing out from a place of deep-seated pain, trying to hold her patchwork family together, however clumsily? The question hung in the air between us, heavy and unanswerable, a chasm that I wasn't sure we could ever cross. The night of the confrontation ended in a stalemate, a silent, bitter truce. We went to bed in the same house, but we were miles apart, the space between us filled with all the things left unsaid. Sleep was impossible. My mind kept replaying the scene in the hallway, the look on Lily's face, the self-righteous anger in Megan's voice. The question of the moral high ground churned in my gut. Was I being too idealistic about privacy? Was Megan's pain, however misdirected, a valid cry for help that I was ignoring? I knew I couldn't let this fester. This wasn't a lunchbox incident or a disagreement over a trampoline video. This was a foundational crack in our relationship, and if we didn't address it, the entire structure would collapse. The next morning, the atmosphere was still heavy. I got up before everyone else, needing the quiet to gather my thoughts. I made coffee and sat at the dining room table, the same table where Lily had sat in silent misery the day before. I knew what I had to do. It wasn't about winning the argument or proving I was right. It was about setting a boundary, a clear, non-negotiable line that protected my daughter and, frankly, protected the future of our relationship. When Megan came out, I didn't greet her with anger. I was calm, resolute. I asked her to sit down. I started by acknowledging her pain. I told her I understood that she felt insecure, that she felt like an outsider, and that I was sorry for my part in making her feel that way. It was important to me that she knew she had been heard. But then I drew the line. I explained in no uncertain terms that her actions were unacceptable. I told her that going through Lily's phone was a violation of trust that I could not tolerate. I said that confronting a child in that manner was emotionally abusive and it would never happen again. I laid out the new rules, not as suggestions, but as conditions for us moving forward. The first rule was about Lily's devices. They were off limits. Her phone, her tablet, any form of communication she had with her mom or her friends was her private domain. The only reason to ever look at them would be in the case of a serious safety concern, and even then, I would be the one to do it, and I would discuss it with her first. The second rule was about conflict. Any issue she had with Lily, or anything Lily said or did that bothered her, was to be brought to me first. We would present a united front. We would be a team. There would be no more cornering children in hallways, no more secret interrogations. The third rule was about therapy. I told her, gently but firmly, that I could no longer be her sole support system for her deep-seated insecurities. She needed professional help to work through her past traumas, not just for the sake of our relationship, but for her own well-being and for Sophie's. Megan listened, her expression unreadable. There were no tears, no anger outbursts. There was just a quiet, heavy stillness. When I finished, she didn't argue. She just nodded slowly, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. It was a tear of defeat, of resignation, but maybe, just maybe, it was also a tear of release. We didn't solve all our problems in that conversation. The trust was broken, and it would take a long time to rebuild. Her insecurities didn't vanish overnight. But in that moment, we established a new framework. A boundary was drawn. In the weeks that followed, things were different. The tension was still there, but it was a different kind. It was no longer the unpredictable, walking on eggshells tension. It was a more somber, thoughtful quiet. Megan made an appointment with a therapist. It was a small step, but it was a step. I made a more conscious effort to include her, to create moments for her and Lily to connect positively, but on Lily's terms. The artsy kit finally got opened. One afternoon, I suggested that Sophie could have a special art time with Lily, with Megan supervising. It was a controlled, positive interaction. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. We are a family still figuring things out, a patchwork quilt that is constantly being restitched. We don't have the moral high ground figured out. Maybe, in a situation this complex, there isn't one. Maybe the only thing you can do is draw a line in the sand, a line that protects the most vulnerable among you, and then do the hard work of building a new foundation on that solid ground. We are a long way from harmony, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like we have a map. And it starts with a simple, unbreakable rule. A child's private world with their parent is sacred. It's a line no one should cross. And in our little, complicated family, that line is now our starting point, our true north.